Hello, everyone. Welcome to Service Speaks. Um, this is our first actual live virtual Service Speaks. And I want to thank the hard work of Helen Damon Moore and her staff who are with us for the important organizing efforts they did to make this all happen and to suggest that hopefully this will not be a yearly occurrence, that in the coming year we'll all be together for another version of our live Service Speaks, which has now been more than a decade old. We're still bringing together students, faculty, hopefully community partners, staff of the university, to really begin to understand what we do as an institution with community as part of a central component of our mission. So I want to begin by welcoming some folks. I think it's important to note that we have members of the Council on Community Engagement here. In fact, this is our last meeting of the year. DePaul's Council on Community Engagement is represented by individuals from across the university, across colleges and schools, all the colleges and schools, as well as different departments, units that engage in with community, that support engagement of community, that publicize engagement of community. And so I want to welcome all of the members and encourage folks to support the members of the council as they bring back important initiatives that we work on institutionally that are forged through council meetings on a quarterly basis. I also want to welcome any community partners that are joining us. I hope that you are enriched by our relationship every year. This has been a very challenging year to do community engagement, of course, but it is a year that I believe we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot about resilience during a pandemic. We've learned a lot about the importance of understanding layers of oppression, layers of challenges through not only the pandemic, but the various social uprisings, the various issues that people have faced and ramifications of violence and oppression that have occurred at a national level, at an international level. And we want to make sure that our community partners know that we're in this as an institution for the long run. It's our effort to continue our relationships even through these difficult times and find creative ways to do work with you. I also would like to welcome any faculty who've joined us, in addition to those from the council. Thank you for supporting your students and supporting our work this year in continuing to reach out through curriculum and other ways to community partners. And of course, especially, I want to welcome our students who are the center.
Don't come to these.
Sorry, somebody off mute there. I especially want to welcome the students who are the center of this particular conference, who articulate what service means at DePaul through their creative organizing, through their creative activism, through their creative engagement, even during this last year, which has really been an incredible feat. We've seen some incredible projects. We're going to learn about them today. And I just want to thank you to all the students for all you've gone through this last year as well, holding it together and doing community work in the name of DePaul's mission. With that, I would like to open Service Speaks. And again, thanks to all the organizers, a special thanks to Helen, who's put her heart and soul into it this year after taking somewhat of a break last year because of the pandemic. And we're so happy that we've spent this last year figuring out how to do this. And hopefully, as I said, we'll be back together next year to be able to do it in person with great food and great community building. I want to the last thing I'd like to say is that we have an evaluation. I will put the link in the chat and we'll probably put it in again. But we encourage you to evaluate everything you've seen today, because we really like to reflect on your thoughts and think about how we can continue to do this important work of reaching out to staff, faculty, students, community folks, and helping to articulate the work that DePaul does as a central part of its mission with communities. So thank you and have a great conference.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for that introduction, Howard, and Commencing Service Speaks. My name is Jonathan Handrup. I use he, him, his pronouns. And if you'd like to rename yourself, you can find those options hovering over the 3 blue dots in the upper right-hand corner of your Zoom box. I will be your moderator today for our amazing panel. We have 7 incredible panelists with us today that you see up on the screen. And I'll let them introduce themselves here in a minute. I'm a program coordinator with the Stain Center. I joined the center in 2011, which by my math is 10 years ago. I'm just so honored to share this space with the panelists and with you all here today. With no further ado, I'd like to kick it off just in alphabetical order. So that would be Andres. I'm going to have all the panelists, if you could address the audience today with just a brief introduction of your name, your major, and your organization where you've been serving, and just to talk about what you did there and where. So we'll start with Andres.
Awesome, thank you. Yes, my name is Andres. I work out of Jumpstart. Jumpstart is a national nonprofit. It works a lot in developing early childhood education. We're currently trying to wrap up the year, obviously, in terms of our curriculum, but we've been very active in creating a hybrid session that works both in person and virtual, obviously due to the pandemic and how that has shifted that type of teaching culture. Jumpstart is situated out of the Egan office. So Egan does a lot of community development, a lot of community engagement, and engaging folks on how they could be advocates for themselves and trying to build off of the community strengths. I don't want to talk too much about Egan yet because I know we have Kevin on here as well. Kevin is based out of the Egan office as well, so he'll probably be giving a little bit more in depth about what we do. And I've been with Jumpstart for 4 years. I started off as a tutor, where I was actually in the classrooms in North Lawndale and Logan Square. Eventually, I ranked up to team leader, where I was actually able to lead 3 other college students. And we were able to implement sessions in the classroom, so I've gotten a chance to actually see these sessions play out. I know how involved they could be and how they work on the background now that I serve as a program assistant. So that's a little bit about me, about my position, and how long I've worked with Jumpstart. And my major is human resource management. I also have a minor in economics. So I know this is a little bit different from what most people in HR work in, but I just really enjoyed the work, and I always love giving back to the communities and working with them. And I see myself doing that in the future as well. Without further ado, I'll pass it to the next panelist.
Thanks, Andres. Hi, everyone. My name is Anna Sievers. Really happy to be here. I use she, her pronouns, and I am currently earning my master's in clinical mental health counseling. And my organization that I'm a part of is called Lift As You Climb, which is a leadership and community development program housed in DePaul's College of Education that engages students, faculty, alumni of our college. And we work in partnership with members of resilient communities in Chicago. And a little bit about my role, kind of in pre-COVID times, I traveled weekly with my team to the back of the yards community here, met with community members to engage in lessons and relationship building, and ultimately creation of a collaborative community project. And I also helped create the curriculum for our weekly visits, which was kind of founded on tenets of trauma-informed social emotional learning. It's a little bit about all I have so far, but yeah, thanks. I'll pass it along.
Hi everyone, my name is Annie. I use she, her pronouns. I am a graduating senior studying sociology. And I am an organizer with the organization Students Against Incarceration. So it is an abolitionist student org on campus. And SAI basically started a book club in partnership with folks detained at Cook County Jail. So my role in what I'll be talking about today is my role as a coordinator for that book club. This last year, it was remote because of the pandemic, so I'll talk a little bit more about that. But we are in partnership working with programming at Cook County Jail. And I will pass it over to Brittany.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brittany Usaro. I'm a junior studying public health, and I actually worked alongside of a class, Global Childbirth and Pandemic, and we worked with Chicago Volunteer Doulas, which is an organization that focuses on birth justice in the Chicagoland area, but basically ensuring that any birthing person who wants the birth of their dreams has it, that they have support that they need and the resources that they need. And we worked this quarter very hardly, me alongside everyone in my class, to do research on what it's like being a doula and what the birthing scene is like during the pandemic here in Chicagoland area. So thank you so much. And I am passing on to Kevin.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? It's great. Okay, perfect. Hi, my name is Kevin Giovanni Amaro. I am actually a graduate student at the Applied Diplomacy program. As you can see, I'm already ready to do this. But I'm a program coordinator at the Egan Office of Urban Education Community Partnerships. Started out as a tutor, had an opportunity to be a community organizer, and just climbed that ladder. And here I am as a program coordinator supporting all those other initiatives. I oversee daily operations of all the programs, including recruiting, appointing, supporting, managing our community organizers, and as well as all this other fun administrative work. But of course, as Andres mentioned earlier, we are an office where we work with communities to address critical social issues, promote social justice, and as well transform the structures of inequity in our society. And we do this by working specifically with schools, because after all, they are one of the main assets of a community. But please, we do much more than that, of course. And I encourage all of you to please search up Egan Office, DePaul online, and see what we could do. But with that, without speaking too much, I'll pass it on to Sarah. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah. I'm a junior and a neuroscience major, and I'm a service immersion assistant with Vincentians in Action. Service immersions, to give a little background, is where a group of DePaul students and one staff member engages in 1 week of immersive service work as well as reflections. And this is something that happens both nationally and internationally, meeting with all different types of communities. And this year we were able to do it virtually. And a little bit about the work that I do. I do a lot of background work, such as student outreach and connecting with community partners. And then during the actual week of service, I help lead the service as well as lead group reflections at the end of every night. And I will pass it on to Watfa.
Hi, everyone. My name is Watfa. I'm also a third year studying neuroscience, and I am the president-elect of SGA for this upcoming year, and I'm also a peer mentor at the Peer Center of Orland Park, which is in the southwest suburbs. A little bit about what I do there. I started off my freshman year of college as just a volunteer and a mentor, and this past year I have been a manager of one of the programs. So every week, specifically Fridays, so after tonight I have to go there. Every Friday we have like different events for our high schoolers in the area, and there's events for every age group too. So Fridays are dedicated to our high schoolers, which is what I am in charge of coordinating. So yeah.
Great, thank you so much for that, everyone. If we could just have all the panelists speak up just a little bit, depending on your circumstances, if you're outside, if you're on headphones, that would be great. So I think I'm just gonna keep it alphabetical order. So Andres, if you could start us off with this next question as well. Can you talk about maybe a unique asset in your community that you work in that people maybe wouldn't know about unless they've spent time there or done work there?
Yes, I'll be talking about the North Lawndale community because that's where I've been stationed at for so long, and that's where I worked out of. I've been able to be in several classrooms at Mount Sinai. That's where one of the preschools is that I worked at, and then that obviously now do program planning for. I think one of the biggest assets though is definitely their resilience. I think one of the panelists touched on that earlier. Definitely resiliency is a really big asset that I think most people don't know about the North Lawndale community. They're always working towards learning, especially the children in the classroom. They always are, they're curious when you come into the classroom. They want to learn, they want to be able to grasp onto these concepts. And I think that's how I see them, as every time I would be in the classroom, they would just be resilient. They would want to come into the classroom, they want to learn, they were ready, and they were excited for it. And I think a lot of people don't get to see that side of North Lawndale, specifically because of what the media shows. I think that it does a little bit of a unjust job at showing the entire picture of North Lawndale. And I actually got to do a bike ride with a community event there just last week, and it was great to be able to go out there to be with the community and see so many people asking what we were doing, why the biking event was happening, which was we're actually doing it to bike out negativity. That was the name of the event. And it was just to be able to show a different side of North Lawndale and show that we could all come together. So it was a really great event, and I'm always just inspired really by what the youth there could do. I think they have so much potential, and as long as they keep going, I see them touching new heights and breaking those stigmas for sure.
Yeah, when thinking about Am I unmuted? There we go.
You are now, yep.
There we go. When thinking about a unique asset of the Back of the Yards community and the folks that we've worked with, I would say that something that really stands out to me is just a willingness to show up and engage, think critically about the strengths, misconceptions, societal problems faced in the community. I'd also say commitment to each other, to learning, working on growing together, learning together, engaging in trust, relationship building, and a unique asset that I think many folks may not know about who are outside of the community would definitely be Back of the Yards coffee shop. Very highly praised from the folks that we worked with.
I think that an asset with the community members that I work with who are currently detained in Cook County Jail. I have worked with them through this book club, but I've also been really lucky to have the opportunity to be a part of the Inside Out program. So I took a course in partnership with folks in Division 10 in Cook County Jail, and they are always so willing and eager to participate. This past year, we've had to write written reflections and correspondence because of the remote aspect, because we couldn't go inside, and we would just get pages of reflections with folks who are so willing to share their very honest opinion on whatever book we were reading. So yeah, I've been really so lucky to be in partnership and community with folks in Cook County Jail and other folks incarcerated across Illinois. And they are all always so willing and eager to share their thoughts and opinions and are definitely competitive in the classroom, I would say. So I've always felt really lucky to learn with and from them.
One of the great assets about the many doulas in the Chicagoland area, specifically the doulas at Chicago Volunteer Doulas, is the diversity of experience and background. When you're working with birthing people who are in high stress situations and you're advocating for them and supporting them, your experiences come out and the backgrounds that you walk through in life come out. And it's just amazing that there's so many people who may have a different experience from you or who have similar experiences for you, standing next to you and helping you during your difficult time, especially during the pandemic. And that's a great asset that the doulas in Chicago have.
You know, I always think about a physical thing when I think about assets, right? Churches, schools. And I have the privilege of working with all the different sites that we have. We have North Lawndale, South Lawndale, Englewood. I mean, there's a handful of places, right? And what I think one thing two things that stand out, aside from being able to see the potential at these schools, it's the knowledge, and it's just that actually it's the knowledge and the skills that a lot of students and families do have, and there's just so many different barriers. But aside from all this, everything that's been said, I did notice that the art in all of these communities they're very vibrant and they're different and they tell a story of their community, whether historically or contemporarily what's happening. And so I think oftentimes I've always, just never paid too much attention when I passed through 26th Street or North London Art. It just kind of like, okay, that's cool, but I didn't put thought into it. And now being in these neighborhoods, as when I said I was a tutor, community organizer, even now, I get to see that, they tell a picture, they tell a story. And, it's just, these are the communities that have been this, traditionally disenfranchised. And, I think that there's a lot of beauty there. And I hope to see more of it.
Something unique that I found was just how quickly those meaningful connections and relationships were able to be formed. Just being able to be in a space where people feel comfortable enough to share their stories and experiences with one another and to laugh and cry with one another and just feel all the feelings. It feels really special to have that, especially since all these connections were made virtually through Zoom this year.
Something from my community that I find interesting is that, we have this motto, we're youth serving the youth. So our organization is entirely youth run. So our youth directors they're youth, like they're named youth directors, they are youth directors. And I think like our oldest volunteers are like 25, 26. So a lot of it is focused on the youth, and the way we give back is by having youth that are volunteers. So for example, I'm a college student and I mentor the high school students. The high school students mentor the junior high students. And it just makes it really special because we're all really passionate about it because we were once in the shoes of the other people that we're mentoring. So it's really nice.
Thank you, everyone, for that discussion on and those points on assets. I think oftentimes we hear so much about the needs of our communities without talking about the amazing assets that are already there that maybe just need to be uplifted and supported more and talked about more, frankly. So on the other end of the spectrum, I'd like to hear a little bit about what was a challenge that you had to overcome, kind of what was a big thing you felt you had to learn, and what was the challenge that was specific to you and your organization in this work? So we'll start with Andres again.
Yeah, so one of the biggest challenges that we faced at Jumpstart, obviously it's been COVID. It's changed everything really, how we are able to engage with children and how we're able to implement these sessions. So a lot of these sessions, they already come with pre-planned activities that then we have tutors engage with the children on. But COVID-19, it's really changed all that. It's really changed how we could obviously talk to the children. It's a lot harder to get them to understand things if you're not able to kind of walk them through in person. Obviously online, there's a barrier, quite literally with the screen and everything. And then technologically, some of these families, some of these communities, they don't have as much access as maybe we do. And that's sometimes things that like the small things that we could take for granted that could definitely be the challenges that they're facing, such as having a stable internet connection, maybe having a working webcam, a working mic, etc. These are just all different small challenges that we kind of have to work through and see how we could surpass them really. So that kind of then leads us to be able to create more fruitful connections with teachers, with families, and be able to understand them, meet them at a halfway mark where it's like, okay, this is a challenge that you're facing. How can we help? How can we close that gap that exists really? I think that's been one of the biggest things that we've been very understanding about and just working through. And I mean, it's been a year-long thing, but I think in the end, it's been well worthwhile to be able to engage with students still, even if it's to some extent to be able to outreach to them, to still offer them the curriculum, still offer them different materials that they could then use at home and whatnot. So it's been a very long struggle, but I think we've all since adapted to it, and we continue to push through it, and I think there's definitely like a light at the end of the tunnel now, which we're very looking forward to be able to get back into the classroom fully and to be able to just plan out things the way that they should be. Because obviously there's a lot of effort that we put into program planning, and now we just want to see that become a realization once again to the fullest extent.
In terms of a challenge for our particular group, again, like I said in the beginning, our work has definitely taken a pause during COVID-19, and I'll speak a little bit more on that. But I'd say a personal challenge was adapting just to ethic of flexibility, learning to adapt our plans and our lessons each week to best meet the needs of the group on any given day. Sometimes that looked like adhering to the curriculum that we had planned out. Sometimes it looked like ditching it completely and just being present with everyone, maybe even backtracking to clear up something that was maybe confusing or kind of reroute even. And learning the true value of flexibility and adaptability was definitely essential to maintaining our commitment to the group and our work. And then largely speaking, unfortunately, just with the nature of everything going online last year, we did have to put a pause on our work when Chicago Public Schools went virtual. And like Kevin, or not, excuse me, not Kevin, like Andres spoke on, there are many students who have difficulty with internet connection or just don't have the access to stable means of connection via either Wi-Fi or their laptop or anything. And so we're hoping to be able to kind of regain that work, finish it up again, start it again in the fall. But that's definitely been a big challenge, kind of learning to navigate those needs and recognize that, you know, we through DePaul have one set of access and ability, but that's certainly not the case across our city.
I would say, as both panelists have said, of course, the pandemic was a major challenge in terms of our book club. Prior to the pandemic, we were able to meet in person and be in community in person in Cook County Jail. And so with the pandemic, we knew that we still really wanted to keep some form of programming, since with COVID, a lot of programming was suspended. And so we wanted to really figure out a way to still keep some sense of community, even if it was remote. And so that was definitely challenging, I think, in a year of a lot of social isolation. That's really was layered on top of already existing isolation between communities who are incarcerated and communities who are not. So we know that prisons and jails are really intended to disrupt communities and isolate folks from their communities. And so one of our main goals as a student organization is to really be in community with and support folks who are experiencing incarceration. And so I think that with this challenge of the pandemic, it also really gave us a push to not give up and really continue. And I think it still really worked out. I think that with the nature of writing the reflections out, the book club reflections, I was able to hear a lot more about individual people's stories. And so I think with the challenges, there were also some positives.
Birth work and dueling is such a hands-on experience and something that you really need to be in person for. And the pandemic kind of disrupted that because as hospitals changed their policy, it was really hard for doulas to be able to be in the room with birthing people. So just overcoming that and figuring out how you can go about using virtual support as a method to calm down a birthing person or advocate for them during their time. And that was something difficult to overcome, but it has been through the power of Zoom and other virtual methods, it's been something we've been able to overcome. And in our course, we did a lot of research on what are some of the issues and the challenges that birthing people and doulas are facing during this time, and how can we go about creating sustainable versions of that during our current pandemic, and how can we use what we have on our assets in our community to be able to be there and support and advocate for birthing people.
There's definitely no denying the setbacks and how the relationships were hindered due to this virtual platform, right? Our community work, it's best done in person, right? But I'm so proud of our team, no doubt. They were able to still do effective work. And, you know, occasionally we just had to meet on Zoom just to connect us outside of work. We had to utilize that. And sadly, even if we wanted to meet in person, some people aren't even in Chicago. So some of us had the privilege to do that and take advantage of that. But if I could talk a little more about a personal thing, and this one goes out to anybody who was on the opposite spectrum, and I think I was definitely on the opposite spectrum. I was a person who only had, you know, one parent, no cousins or anything. I grew up in what they call I grew up in neighborhoods where it's better you just stay home. or at least I thought so. But I was growing up, so by the time I'm 19 going to college, I've already been ingrained that, I live in this individualized society, and any institutions and government agencies, um, I had no faith in them. I had no community, whether it was family or anything else like that. And so when I needed to do this work with the Egan, honestly, I'll be honest, I haven't shared this, but I felt very uncomfortable. I don't feel shy, but building connections with individuals coming from being such a different person was so hard. I felt uncomfortable. I didn't know how to feel. I needed to honestly do a lot of self work, meet with counselors, and so there were so many things that needed to be addressed before I could even make authentic relationships. So I think that was a huge thing, and so I'm a totally different person today. And I do think that's to the DePaul, but especially the Egan office. And of course, some self-assessment, but um, that was really difficult. I'll be honest. And now I think there's always work to be done, of course, but I definitely feel that I could finally connect with people, and I understand what community means. I understand the importance. And so I'm kind of happy too that I've had the experience of both sides. But here we are.
I have taken part in service immersions every single year I've been at DePaul, and this was the first time I've ever had to do it virtually. And I was challenged by that, by having to adjust to an online format, by having to change what I've become so accustomed to. I needed to find new ways to keep people engaged, to build community, and to engage in service work. And all of it felt so uncertain. And at first, I didn't even think it was possible. I wasn't sure if it would happen this year. But by remaining flexible and by changing my perspective on what I believed service work was supposed to look like, I saw that I needed to meet people where they were at and do what needs to be done.
Yeah, there's no doubt COVID definitely took a hit, especially because we're a mentorship program. We like seeing the kids every weekend. We started coming back in person, but even then, like, there's no hugging, no like contact. Can't eat. We used to eat like every week. We can't do that anymore. But I think something kind of along the lines that Anna said was having flexibility and adaptability. Um, before COVID, there were some situations where we have a schedule and we end up not following it at all because they're having a good time doing something else. And then on the fly, we just got to mix things up, change things. Sometimes team members can't make it. So you got to kind of be flexible in that sense. So it's definitely taught me to be more adaptive. And then as COVID hit, trying to find ways to still keep them engaged, the kids that come, we didn't realize how powerful social media could be, how many other options there were for us besides having that in-person mentorship. So just being adaptable, being flexible, trying to figure things out. But that's so far it's been working, and we're kind of slowly transitioning to what we normally do. So.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, everyone. I mean, community work inherently is all about being adaptive and being pliable. And I think the pandemic just, heightened that times 10. So all of the work that you have done this year through that lens really needs to be applauded, I feel. So unfortunately, Andres is having some technical difficulties. So he has sent in his last two responses. So I'll read those aloud before we hear from the panel on the next question, which is, what was your biggest takeaway from this work? And what would you advise students, or how would you advise students engaging in this work kind of in your footsteps? So for Andres, he says his biggest takeaway from his experience is that we all have something we can contribute to help communities write their next chapter. Whether it's time, resources, or event planning, we can all help communities make their visions become that much closer to reality. And he says, I would advise future students to keep an open mind and not see communities for what they quote unquote lack, but rather to ask communities how they can help build from their strengths. So from there, I'll pass it on to Anna.
Yeah, I mean, I would just like to echo every bit of that. And I would say, and of course I come from the perspective of a counseling student, but my biggest takeaways have certainly been the power of trust and relationship building, and the value of creating space for others, particularly those in marginalized communities or who have faced disenfranchisement, to share their perspectives and experiences. And as an advisement to future students or anyone hoping to engage in civic work, is to remember that social injustice can best be addressed by uniting experience with access. And as participants or individuals, groups dictate the needs and assets of their community, we work collaboratively to uplift and empower their experiences.
I would say my biggest takeaway from this book club and in all of my experiences working with folks who are incarcerated and detained, and also with my community members of students against incarceration throughout my time at DePaul, I think it's really strengthened my understanding of abolition as a political vision and a structural analysis of oppression and a practical organizing strategy. I think I have a much better understanding of that, and I feel very much grounded in an abolitionist framework. And I would really encourage and advise other students to continue to invest time in becoming familiar with the wealth of resources we have from prison and police abolitionists that exist, and so that we can really learn from them. One abolitionist that I follow closely and have learned a lot from, her name is Miriam Kaba, and she states that the work of abolition insists that we foreground the people who are behind the walls, that we listen to them, and that we take their ideas seriously. And I think that's really important in terms of the book club, because I think a lot of times student organizers can get stuck on campus, kind of caught in this bubble of just staying in Lincoln Park. And I think it's really important to remind ourselves that folks in Cook County Jail are our community members. And in fact, some of them are our fellow students. And so we really have to take advantage of the privilege and access that we have on this campus, which is immense, so that we can use that and really uplift folks who otherwise are intentionally denied access to these resources. So I would say learn more about abolition.
Wow, those are great. From Professor Good and working with Chicago Volunteer Doulas, I've ultimately learned that there's so much more that needs to be done in terms of birth justice and achieving our end goal, which is justice for every birthing person. Ultimately, just opening your eyes and listening to the experiences and stories and validating the experiences and stories of birthing people. Not everyone has the best birthing experience, and sometimes they're silenced because we do have a system, a medical system that favors the opinions and ideas of doctors and professionals, and kind of sees people who are birthing people who don't have the best experiences as someone having something wrong with themselves. And just opening your eyes to the different experiences of everyone. Birth justice has so much to offer to everyone, because everyone is being born at one point. And I think as far as what we can do, what I encourage other people to look into and engage into is policy work. How can you advocate for, stand behind, research, learn more about birth justice, and what can you do to just help us with policy work?
Great stuff. And I think building off exactly my previous one, I think we recognize that relationship building is intentional, requires investment of ourselves, time, and so I think the biggest takeaway is that differences and conflicts cannot be resolved within like the context of authentic relationships. So value long-term relationships amongst diverse groups of people and communities. And I think a part of that is our ability to pursue health, happiness, wealth is also dependent on other forms of life. We're all interconnected. I don't believe we'd live in individualistic society. We might be, that might be perspective, but we shouldn't. And so I think with this work, this community engagement work, it can be difficult sometimes. So be okay with what you ultimately can't do, because there's so much that we can do. So I'll leave it with that.
My biggest takeaway was the importance of patience and consistency. So over the spring break, I led the virtual El Salvador immersion, and we learned a little bit about Oscar Romero, and he's a priest who advocated for human dignity and nonviolence. And in a prayer dedicated to his memory, it says, "We cannot do everything," and there's a sense of liberation in realizing that. This enables us to do something and to do it very well. It may be incomplete, but it is a beginning. We may never see the end results, but that is the difference between the master builder and the workers. We are workers. We are prophets of a future not our own. And I just encourage future students to not be discouraged if there's a lack of immediate results. We must remain motivated and active in the work that we do, and to hope that one day there will be results, even if we're not there to see it.
I think my biggest takeaway from our community was how much we really needed the resources that we have and how big of an impact they make. Our target audience are young Muslim youth who live in, obviously, we live in a non-Muslim country and a very small Muslim population in the area that we're in. So providing them an environment where they could embrace their identity, work on developing their faith, and also like kind of give them tools to handle the situations they're going to encounter, whether that's Islamophobia or just like, peer pressures that with things they aren't really familiar with and don't know how to handle. So I think my biggest takeaway was just how important these things are, no matter how stressful it might get. Even when we had to take a break for COVID, all the kids kept like asking us when we were going to come back because they really do need those resources. So I guess my advice to someone else that was going to come into this role would just be don't get discouraged, kind of like how Sarah was saying, but also just like know your work has an impact even if you're not seeing it right away. Because, I look back to my freshman year, and my freshman year, I did not think I was doing anything. And now I'm looking back and I'm about to leave. And it's making me really nostalgic to see that, I've watched some of these girls like completely grow up and now I gotta kind of take a step back, but I'm very grateful that I've gotten to know them and work with them.
Amazing. Thank you all so much. So we know that sustainability is just so crucial to this work. So I wonder if we can talk about how your work can be built upon. So to start us off with Andres' response, he says his work can definitely be built upon. Early childhood education is constantly evolving. So continuing to plan curriculum that is relevant and new for communities is essential. So many students in preschool begin to form their educational career and experience at that young age. So being able to give them positive experiences early on where students and families can be involved in their learning is continuous work. So I will pass it off to Anna.
Yeah, our work can absolutely can be built on, and hopefully will be come the fall when things are a little bit more open. But in general, working with members of resilient communities can and should always be continued, always be prioritized, but only if outsiders, for example, like myself and many of my team members from DePaul, are not from the back of the yards community, specifically in our situation. And other panelists have talked about the isolation and the privilege that comes with attending school in Lincoln Park. It does not at all show both the strengths and the challenges faced by many others within Chicago. And our work can really, truly only be built upon if folks who are in places like Lincoln Park, who attend institutions like DePaul, have a willingness to show up consistently, listen wholeheartedly, uplift the stories and experiences of the members of these communities, work in partnership to identify and meet their needs, and keep trust and relationship building at the core of all the work that we do. Not assuming that we understand the strengths or the weaknesses, listening and working in partnership would be the way that I would think this work can best be built upon.
The work of book club and Students Against Incarceration can and definitely will be built upon. We are finishing our book from spring quarter next week, and we hope to continue in the summer. We have a wonderful SAI community who really hopes to be able to safely go inside and be in community physically with our members at Cook County Jail. So that's definitely something we are looking forward to. Other than that, I think this work can and should be built upon by continuing to find ways to increase access to DePaul and other higher educational institutions for folks who have been impacted by the criminal legal system. SAI worked on a campaign to ban the box, which would essentially help increase access by removing the question that inquires about criminal history on our admissions application. So that was a campaign that we were working on and is sort of still in the works. We've had some wins, but would like to ban the box across Illinois. And so I would really encourage you to check out and try to get involved with SAI if possible, but also other campaigns that are working to increase educational access, maybe get involved with the Inside Out program. And then also, I would always encourage everyone to seek out potentially getting a pen pal of someone who's currently incarcerated. There are so many options, and there are hundreds of people across Illinois, I know for a fact, who are looking for just somebody to write to. So there's a Solidarity Letters campaign that was specifically created during coronavirus. I can drop the Gmail in the chat, but you can email them and ask to get paired, and that is a lovely way to continue to build this much needed community.
Thank you to my previous panelists for sharing. There is so much that can be done in terms of birth justice and putting an end to obstetrical violence and creating equitable births. And honestly, like I said previously, I think it starts with policy reform and just seeing what you can do to get involved with birth justice. I would encourage people to check out Chicago Volunteer Doulas, and as well as any other birth justice organization that you can find. There's so many things that you can do and so many ways that you can help them out. And that can either start with writing letters to Congress members or your local politicians, being a doula yourself, coming in, doing active support with birthing people. There's just so many small steps that we can do to eradicate obstetrical violence and promote birth justice.
And definitely, we really value long-term partnerships with communities to lead sustainable and transformative experiences. And so a piece of this is really this is why it's so important for it to be community driven as well. Our work with communities must be first by their invitation, driven by community folks who take ownership of those assets, those knowledge that they develop. And that way, if if we ever go our separate ways or someone new comes in, they own that and they keep building on top of that all the time. And so I think there's two ways to see this question as well. That's one thing, right? I when I came in, there was this organization. Well, it's more of a group called the Council of Elders, and it's a group of activists who've done many works for many decades throughout Chicago, whether it was environment, education. And it started out as discussions about his stories. And now as I'm leaving now, I think we figured out a way to put it on the internet, but also make it more accessible to people. And it just keeps building, right? I think that's kind of the great thing. New people come in, and when we document stuff well, people are getting more intelligent. And I think our initiatives, I've seen the Egan office in the 3 years I've been here, just keep growing and growing, and taking on just more amazing projects and succeeding in them. And so I think the person who was in my position previously, her name was Sol, and I think she was the epitome of the Egan mission. And I felt like I wanted to be in this position because I feel that I understood her her energy, almost like her energy. Like she was just always so positive and supportive and dedicated to this work. And I feel like I build on her work. That's the way I've been working this whole year with the team. It's really because I've seen our previous leader do that, and Jan as well. And so in a way, that's being built on it. And I hope that the work that I've left, and as well as the approaches, right, this energy, that I hope that the person who comes afterwards can build on that as well.
The work can always be built upon, and I think it starts by making people aware of the injustices that constantly surround us, whether or not they're directly affecting us. On my immersion, we met with an organization called OMUSA, which advocated for women's rights and labor rights. And a woman named Carmen said, you need to organize the anger, and defend the joy. And I feel like that sort of shifted my perspective and how I saw things, because I felt like I saw all these injustices and they were making me angry, and I felt sometimes really burnt out. But I think it's important to find those pockets of joy in between, like the communities that I've found there, the relationships that I built, the laughter that I shared. And I think a big part of service immersions is taking the lessons that you learned there and then sharing it when you come back home and living it when you come back home. And I hope for people to find service immersions can be a place, and it can be a stepping stone, it can be a starting point to learn about a certain issue, to learn alongside your peers, even if you don't know anything about that issue, and to learn directly from community members who are willing to share their energy and their resources and the honest work that needs to be done.
Yeah, as everyone else said, there's always more work to be done, especially with the communities that we're working with. I think right now we've done a really good job at engaging our youth, and I think the next step would be educating the community. Because like I said, we are a Muslim organization in a non-Muslim community. So doing as much as we can to educate, the surrounding schools, the surrounding community members, just about, who we are and like that we exist and that we want fair treatment and that there's a lot of things that we're advocating for. I know our communities last year advocated to get Eid, which is one of our holidays, off for students at their school. So typically we'd have to take like a day off and just make up our work. But a couple of the schools in the area heard the complaints of the community and decided to close the school on that day, which was a huge gain for us. So I think in terms of building on that work, continuing to engage our youth within the mosque, but also continuing that outreach and education outside of the mosque because it's been working and we still have a lot more to do.
I want to personally thank all the panelists for a truly inspiring testimony this afternoon. Thank you so much for your willingness to share your experiences with us. Unfortunately, that's going to conclude the 2021 Student Roundtable at Service Speaks. I could talk with you all for another 45 minutes, but unfortunately we are at time. If you would be interested in speaking or dialoguing further with any of the panelists, I'm sure they would love to do that. If you would like to drop them a note in the chat to maybe share your contact info if you want to reach out, that would be great. And with that, I will turn it over now to Hai Lee, who's going to share a few highlights from our first ever virtual chat book.
Thank you, Jonathan. We're so lucky to have such great panelists this year. And hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Hailey Wan, and I started work at the Stain Center back at the end of January this year. I haven't had a chance to attend an in-person Service Speaks conference yet, but I hear it's very different from the way that we're doing it this year. I'm here today to introduce you to DePaul's first online chapbook. The chapbook is a small publication that's been traditionally handed out at the conference. And how to reproduce this was one of the most difficult challenges that we had related to a virtual Service Speaks this year. As you can see, the format has allowed us to include the entries of all students who reflected on their experiential learning work throughout the year, from different departments, programs, and courses. Our chapbook this year is published online, and the link is going to be available for everyone on our social media pages next week. So for now, as an example, I'd like to quickly highlight one 4-entry spread. Annie Skoltalk, Anna Severs, Hayden Smith, and Victoria Smolin. Two of these names should sound very familiar to you at this point. We just heard Annie and Anna on the panel. Annie, as you heard earlier, did some incredible things with the Students Against Incarceration book club this year. I had a chance to interview her for an article for DePaul Newsline, and her work and dedication are just amazing. Anna, Hayden, and Victoria were actually 3 of our Meister Scholarship winners this year, and I had the pleasure of being on the scholarship committee and read through their applications. And I was astounded by everyone's accomplishments. Also, as you can see, Victoria is a sophomore, and she's the first student of sophomore standing to be featured in a Service Speaks chapbook. And she's also the first student of sophomore standing to be featured or to receive a Meister scholarship, which is so cool. So congratulations to our scholarship winners this year, by the way. You'll see them labeled in the slideshow. We're gonna leave this screen up for a minute, and you can finish reading at your own pace without me talking in the background. But if this is too blurry for you, you can see the first 30 pages of the chapbook in the link that I'll send in the chat right now. Here it is. You should be able to click on it, and it'll bring you to our online chapbook. I'll give everyone a minute to look at it. Okay, so as I mentioned, the complete version will be available for everyone on our social media pages early next week. As for our social media pages, you can find us on Facebook under the name DePaul University Stain Center. Our handle is DePaul Stains. You can also find us on Twitter at DePaul Stains. Our Instagram handle is the Stain Center. Also, our event hashtag is hashtag ServiceSpeaks2021, so please use it. And now we have the slideshow with Angelica and Andy.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Angelica Chesley, and I'm an assistant director at the Stain Center, as well as the Community Service Scholars Coordinator. And I'm here with my co-presenter.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andy Klunsman, and I'm a community-based service learning student and a community partner intern. And here we have a slideshow to show you some of the great community service work students have done this year.
Selene Abram volunteered at a Just Harvest. Selene served and prepared meals in the community kitchen for approximately 200 guests while overseeing new volunteers and delegating tasks. Selene's biggest takeaway is the importance of food justice and hunger in our society and the greater Chicago community. Maham Ahmed served as a Sunday school teacher at the Morton Grove Muslim Education Center. Maham says that teaching a future generation of community leaders and activists the fundamentals of faith, worship, and character to prepare them to succeed and make a positive change in tomorrow's world.
Salah Akraz served as a tutor for children in elementary school. Salah says that they are able to give back to the community by teaching the young ones who in return will build the future of our community. Their biggest takeaway is that everyone has their unique way of learning. And then we also have Hosine Emil, who serves as a school community organizer at Nixon Elementary. One of Hosine's projects was a creative competition for youth and young adults to create a design that will be printed on face masks. 5,000 of these face masks will be distributed across Lake County.
Aaron Augustine has been a peer mentor for a high school student for the past 4 years. Over the last 3 years, Aaron was able to move past the mentee-mentor relationship and gained a strong friendship. Erin's biggest takeaway from her experience was the community and friendship can be formed anywhere. And that's the goal of CBSL. Callie Bear worked as an affordable housing intern at One Northside Chicago. They worked with the Lift the Ban Coalition to advocate the repeal of the Rent Control Preemption Act of 1997 and the National Homes Guarantee to advocate for the affordable housing for all.
Tyler Bogarts Brown harvested fruit from local trees for donation to community-based hunger organizations. Tyler cultivated a deep understanding of the problem of the sheer amount of food placed in the wrong pathways and getting into the hands of the wrong people, or worse, getting into no hands at all. Alyssa Boster has been interning at the Center for Disability and Elder Law. Alyssa is a firm believer in fair and equal access to legal services and is now able to see how pro bono legal services can help so many people. Alyssa hopes that everyone is able to receive good legal representation at a low cost one day.
Will CoScore assisted with facilitating conversations in English class with Telpush College Community Education Project. Will work with non-native English speakers to help them gain a better understanding and confidence with speaking English and learn the best ways to communicate across language barriers. Hannah Cole worked on engaging the city's project, Chicago Public School Mentees on Instagram. Hannah saw how the city's project is there to offer support for young students who are capable, creative, and kind, who might be looking for tools to grow and ways to further contribute to strengthening their communities.
Sarah Dubovne took part in a virtual service immersion trip to El Salvador. It was an opportunity to be part of incredible discussions and events with those who have been putting in the work to help their communities. This experience was transformative for Sarah because it showed that service, community, and joy can still exist in a pandemic. Great job, Sarah. Emma Dahman served as a tutor at Chicago Lights and formed a bond with their student, Kevin. Emma says coursework, learning about the ABCD approach, and most importantly, time watching Kevin at Chicago Lights flourish in his learning have all taught them to listen deeply.
Annalie Delgado assisted with meal prepping at Cornerstone Community Outreach. Annalie hopes that their contributions has helped gain resources during the pandemic, as well as ideas for what they would like to utilize in the future. Annalie's biggest takeaway is that even a little bit of our time can make a huge difference. Grace Del Vecchio worked with the Director of Communications for the city's project. Since joining the city's project team in 2018, Grace helped plan multiple fundraisers. Grace's biggest takeaway is that we're not actually doing something for the community unless the community has a say in what we are doing.
Lindsay Dow's service was done virtually with Pangea. Lindsay found candidates with goals that were aligned with Pangea's mission to empower individuals and communities to fulfill their purpose and potential by fostering cultures of literacy. Lindsay's biggest takeaway was understanding the importance of storytelling, education, and authentic representation. Violette Isho met twice a week with Jumpstart kids to read and do different activities together that add to their book of the week. One of Violette's biggest takeaways was seeing how the ABCD method works in that we come together using our strengths and not let what seems missing define the community.
Kimberly Fair has a deep passion for economic policy and how it can be used to tackle poverty in the United States. Kimberly's research seeks to evaluate fellowship and mentoring programs' success at combating systematic racism through economic mobility and empowerment in 18 to 30-year-old Black men. Such important work. Daisy Garcia assisted in the Mujeres Latinas in Acción program, helping women to create and begin their own small business. Daisy was a part of this community with other Hispanic women and contributed time and devotion to the service site. It was an experience that showed the incredible impact these small businesses can have on a neighborhood.
Izzy Glob volunteered at Lincoln Park Community Services, serving as one of its 1,800 volunteers as a front desk attendant until the COVID-19 pandemic began. By serving at LPCS, educating herself and her peers, and creating friendships with the guests and staff, Izzy helped make a difference, even if it was just from a small interaction or a small donation. Emilio Gutierrez Lopez served as a volunteer at the recyclery site and assisted in maintaining a clean workspace, admitting new customers, and reviewing inventory levels. Emilio learned how a positive and healthy environment helps in strengthening the bond between an organization and its community.
In Natasha Hagelberg's work with the Folded Map Project, they connected neighborhoods on opposite sides of Chicago to identify differences and inequalities. Natasha learned that there are so many disparities between neighborhoods on the opposite sides of the city and how we can help use our privilege to amplify other communities. Marianelli Hanna has contributed over 80 hours of volunteer service at the Beacon Place since January of 2020. As a future nurse, Marianelli feels that it was an important time to be there for her community by sharing knowledge, skills, and speaking to the families in Spanish about COVID-19.
Audrey Jewett was able to bring a unique blend of outdoor education, arts, and creativity and advocacy to the children she worked with. Audrey says that showing up with your whole heart is the only way to approach community-based work, and that DePaul's message of getting out into the community has influenced how she moves through life. And then we also have Allie Johnson, who served as the social media and communication specialist for the Egan office, where she created and produced videos for Egan's YouTube channel to help broaden our community engagement to the digital space. She produced educational short videos that children of all ages could access for free.
You might recognize him. Andy Klansman, our co-presenter, advocated for police accountability legislation by canvassing neighborhoods, managing data system, and overseeing office operations. Since COVID, Andy has focused on compiling research on cases of police torture in Illinois and research for clemency petitions.
Thanks, Angelica. Thanks for the shout out.
Allison Krolop, intern at Paul Chicago, assisting with various administrative tasks, maintaining stewardship with donors, and researching ways to expand support. Allison's biggest contribution to the community was assisting in raising funds to support an organization that is a no-kill animal shelter.
Andres Lagunas served as a court member, team leader, and program assistant for Jumpstart. Over Andres' four years, they had the opportunity to close the kindergarten readiness gap in marginalized communities and had the pleasure of facilitating Jumpstart tutoring sessions in different classrooms at Gads Hill Center. Let's go, Andres. And Javier Lozano helps serve food to those in need through a soup kitchen in Uptown. Javier talked to people about their struggles and their struggles as an escape from reality and gave them advice. Javier's biggest takeaway is to be kind to everyone and to not make judgments, because at the end of the day, we are all human.
Yukio Mary Quinn worked with Telepost College Community Education Project by translating written materials. She also tutored and watched over students, whether it was immigration aid or students simply needing tutoring for the math homework. Yuki saw how this community focused on helping people in any way that they could. Shahir Amir Ali Morani joined the Scouts unit at the church at Karachi, Pakistan at the age of 6. Last year, Pakistan requested Scouts for help due to their expertise in basic first aid. Sahir, being the amazing individual that he is, actually traveled back to Pakistan to administer and deliver COVID-19 tests.
Muhammad Mustafa worked to improve the use of technology for future generations, learning that even though we are keeping our distance and working from home, technology allows strong communities to form by keeping us united and making it possible for us to build bonds with community members. Meghana Nair worked as a school liaison and research assistant for the Cities Mentor Project. Meghana's biggest takeaway from working with the Cities Project was realizing the importance of intervention in improving the academic standing and emotional well-being of the students.
Anthony Oksha says that social justice is about cultivating an environment where everyone is validated. Anthony's work with Erie Neighborhood House as an ESL tutor helped where he was helping a man from Mexico with his English and was originally just a Saturday afternoon turned into a new community experience. Rebecca Otto began her service year with AmeriCorps in 2019 as a STEM tutor with 10th grade students at Bridgeport Charter School. Rebecca's year of service showed her that we hold a collective responsibility toward facilitating equality, equity, and justice. Rebecca values the challenges and insights presented by staff and peers at DePaul.
Nancy Padilla worked in the Empresarias del Futuro sector at Mujeres Latinas en Acción by facilitating program outlines and facilitating in events for women of color who seek to open their own businesses. Through this program, Nancy witnessed how they taught these women to navigate through the business world and administration requirements. Sierra Pantlin planned and led a leadership program for Chicago teens by organizing service events for Little Village and teaching high schoolers about social justice issues and leadership. Sierra saw how involved and active the teams were in their community, along with the amazing ideas that they contributed to the various service events.
Emily Rice coordinated the social media for the City's Mentors Project and collaborated with the City's Project communications team, mentors, supervisors, and others associated with the project to provide the community with informative social media updates. Emily learned the importance of connection and communication within a community. Tasha Richardson's contribution to the community include empowering youth through service projects, providing access to a quality education through teaching, and connecting families and individuals to financial stability. Tasha says, when one serves, it helps to serve the servant even more than the person we serve.
Alondra Romero says that the students at Erie foster a welcoming home. The last month they served in person was February of 2020. Then they went months without seeing the students at Erie. Alondra did not know what to expect when virtual service began in October of 2020, but seeing familiar faces on screen made them very happy. Hope Roosevelt provided classroom support to pre-K teachers. Hope says that the students all did their very best to be engaged on Zoom, which could not have been an easy feat given that they're mostly 3 to 5 years old. Hope says the experience would not have been possible without our community partner be willing to try something new with us. I know Hope, this is an amazing person.
Annie Skoltok led a book club with participants in DePaul's community and those detained in Cook County Jail. The pandemic halted most programming for incarcerated folks this past year, so Annie knew it was important to make a book club work remotely. Annie encourages us to consider finding ways to build community with incarcerated folks in the area. As a peace ambassador for Lift As You Climb, Anna Sievers met with high school students and staff to engage in lessons, relationship building, and creation of collaboration community projects. Honoring the potential and dignity of every person is essential to both Anna's professional identity and the mission of DePaul. That's so Vincentia.
Hayden Smith's experience in community-based works comes from internships with the Young Africans Leaders Initiative with the US Department of State and the nonprofit NPH USA. After DePaul, Hayden would like ideally to continue helping others gain support for their work through social media and work on advocating for educational reform. Victoria Smolin was able to work with Professor Heather Smith in GEO 200 to create community programming explaining the disparity of population and wealth distribution between Chicago's north and southeast sides. In the future, she would like to create websites, applications, and designs for advocacy work, a sustainable company, or a non-profitable organization. Victoria feels that every person should be able to make an effort to incorporate service in their lives.
In Anna Sievers' role as a graphic design intern, Anna made window displays for Black Lives Matter and to raise awareness of Asian American hate crimes. Anna says that art is really unique and useful way to promote deeper and more important causes, and a great way to get big messages across and spread awareness to helpful programs. Cameron Swanson is currently an academic counselor for Chicago Public Schools and the Department of Health Care and Family Services. Cameron's restorative justice background from the Peace, Justice, and Conflict Studies program helped lay the foundation for Cameron's identity as an agent of social change and future social worker.
Peter Terse ran campaigns, created digital content, and personally signed up to be the match's donor registry. Peter's team worked to not only just increase the donor number, but also the number of diverse donors as they are desperately needed to save the lives of our community's diverse populations. Hannah Tesfaye started with Refugee One by working on the after-school website and making flyers. And then she transitioned into tutoring kids and then was placed into a role as the graphic designer and animator for the Know Your Rights project. Anna animated an infographic video addressing the rights that refugees have in America.
Brittany Usaro researched how COVID-19 has affected doula work and altered the framework in place for birth justice. Brittany's Global Childbirth course drafted a report of the stories of birth justice and birth injustice during the pandemic. Brittany learned how COVID has impacted the birthing experiences. Claire Van Spaybrock taught ESL classes, assisted in community events, and designed a newsletter for her service site. Claire is currently helping with this year's World Refugee Day and used her Arabic language skills to assist in teaching English conversation classes tailored for Arabic speakers from the CSS program to be a part of a larger support system. Great job.
Angelica Verzi helps serve nutritious meals to the community while engaging in meaningful conversations by serving at a Just Harvest. From Angelica's experience, what made the biggest difference were the conversations she had with members of the communities and learning from their stories. And Jasmine Wallace worked closely with Susanna Ortiz, the program coordinator at Erie Neighborhood House, as her administrative assistant. Jasmine's job included contacting the students and tutors of the ESL Adult Learners Program with different news, updates, requests for resources, and connections. Great job, Jasmine.
Yasmin Williams helped out in the after-school program with kids who were new to America. Yasmin served by teaching the kids English and helping them with their homework, and their biggest takeaway from the experience was to always be kind and patient with everyone. LaRonda Wilson focuses on solutions to police violence targeting Black Lives Matter, policies that counter systematic racism, and efforts to positively transform institutions that condone white supremacy. LaRonda's professional goal is to contribute to research that will advance racial equity and social justice through public policy.
And finally, we heard from Watfa Zaid, who served as a member at the Prayer Center of Orland Park. Watfa was able to help provide a safe space for young Muslims to practice their religion, meet friends, and receive advice. The biggest takeaway is that it's super important to advocate for our youth and foster environments that allow them to grow.
Our program contributions this year were as follows. I myself am part of the Community Service Scholars. I'm the program coordinator, and Gabrielle DeLeon is the MCI and CPI coordinator. And this year's Service Speaks committees, you can read on your screen. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. I think I'm just going to jump right in here. My name's Mark LeBeau. I'm an Associate Vice President in Mission and Ministry. And it's really my pleasure just to share a few words and thoughts with you here today. I'll make it quick. I know we're short on time. But the first is really just thank you and wow and awesome. Great work by everyone involved in this program and all of you students who presented in the earlier panel discussion and in the slideshow. I come because I'm the co-chair along with Helen Damon Moore and Howard Rosing of the DePaul Council on Community Engagement, which is a collection of faculty, staff, students, and others involved in community engagement work across the institution. We've only been around a few years, but it's a collection of people doing a variety of different forms of community engagement across DePaul, and we're hoping that we can help coordinate and help DePaul think more collaboratively and systemically and strategically about our community engagement work. But what you shared here today, I know I speak on behalf of all those involved with the council, the faculty and staff, makes us not only proud, but I have to say joy-filled too, because this kind of work and the work that you're doing and that you're exemplifying is exactly the reason why so many of us are here at this institution, at DePaul, because this is what we want to see happen and what most gives us life. So thank you so much for all these examples and reasons to be happy and joyful for what you've been about in your education and your work at DePaul. Thank you. I also want to, I'm happy and want to share, I'm sharing in the chat. I don't know how many people are aware of the Council on Community Engagement, but if you scroll down on the page I just put in the chat, there are some guiding principles for community engagement at DePaul. And the only reason I want to bring these up, you know, the faculty and staff and others involved in the council came up with these a year or two ago. But the reason I want to point them out now is because of the way in which all the examples I saw today reflect exactly what these principles of community engagement are all about. That just really struck me in watching the presentations today. And I wanted to say that again, and that's why we're so happy and proud of you and the work you've been doing. And lastly, I just want to thank all the faculty members and the staff members at DePaul who helped make all of this possible and who work with the students in their coursework and beyond to help make this commitment to community engagement at DePaul come alive. So thank you to all of you, and thank you for the opportunity to be here and witness this today. It was a great joy for me. Thank you very much.
So can people hear me? Okay, says my internet is unstable, which would be perfect ending for today. And we haven't quite switched to me, but that's fine. Great. So I am the Associate Director of the Stain Center, and it is my great pleasure to wrap things up today and to thank you all for coming. I'll have a few thank yous at the end of what I have to say, and I know it's been a long time on Zoom. Anything after maybe an hour gets long on Zoom, and we've run over our promised 1 hour and 15 minutes. So I'll be really quick here. But just to say that in the past, as you've heard, we've done a in-person student presentations by PowerPoint, as some of you know. And this time we've done 55 slides and 7-person student panel. And we hope to return to an in-person conference next year with students presenting their community engagement outcomes through individual PowerPoint presentations at the Lincoln Park Student Center next spring. But the asset-based way to see this year's work is that we may actually want to add a panel, a slideshow, and an online chat book to the PowerPoint student presentations that we do next year. We'll see. And it is the case that the recording of the panel and the slideshow and the chat book will all be available to you and to us to use on our website and on social media, as Hailey said, next week. So we'll be getting that information to you next week. And so we thank you for helping us to create new ways of telling the story of community engagement at DePaul. We've wanted to do something like this in the past, but this nudged us forward a whole lot. This virtual forum also allows us to reflect on the network that is represented by this year's student engagement. Multiple students served at the same places, have addressed similar social justice issues, have worked on group projects together, have done research that has extended the reach of their community partners to other organizations, and have, in some cases, reached out regionally and nationally in their work. This year, from the Zoom box that we've been in together today, we can see not only what students and their faculty members and partners have done, but also what they will continue to do as future partners and as lifelong learners. That is service speaking. So thank you all for doing that speaking as students, and for listening and for your sharing that with others moving on as supporters of those students. I think it's been a really exciting day, and I appreciate it. Before it's time to hit the leave meeting button for all of us, I'd just like to echo Howard in recognizing the groups who were attending, and to thank theater professor Michelle Lopez Rios, who helped to prepare our wonderful panelists, and to thank our speakers, especially Andy Klensman, who distinguished himself as a student facilitator, and our tech assistants, Margot and Caitlin, Annalie Delgado, who prepared the playlist, and to give a super special shout out to Hailey Wan, who co-chaired the Service Speaks committee and was our graphic designer, created the chapbook, created the slideshow, and got no sleep for the last month, I think. So, I hope I've thanked everyone I should have, and for everyone, have a great long weekend, except my students who have a draft of their report due tomorrow afternoon. So, any last things, Hailey, or please do evaluate. The link is in the chat. It's also, you'll get a notice of it through Eventbrite next week. Okay, anything else? Service Speaks about evaluation. Okay, thank you so much. Congratulations, students. You've had a great service year. We really appreciate it. All right, take care, everybody.